If there's one thing humans are exceptionally good at across the galaxy, it's letting people underestimate them. Aliens judged us by our smiles, our backyard barbecues, and our strange obsession with arguing over whose grill cooked the best steak. My neighbors made the same mistake. They looked at the gray hair, the quiet routine, and the weathered lawn chair outside my little house and decided I was nothing more than an old retiree killing time until the next neighborhood cookout. I never bothered correcting them. After all, peace is much easier to enjoy when nobody knows what you're actually capable of. I had lived in Harmony Ridge for nearly 6 years, a suburban colony where humans and half a dozen alien species somehow managed to coexist without starting an interstellar incident every weekend. The streets were lined with glowing crystal trees imported from the Lyran system. Robotic lawn mowers politely apologized whenever they bumped into someone's fence, and every mailbox automatically translated messages into 43 languages. It was paradise. Well, almost. Every paradise needs one family determined to remind everyone else how rich they are. Mine lived directly across the street. The Hamiltons didn't simply own the biggest house in the neighborhood. They owned the loudest opinions, the brightest hover cars, the fanciest outdoor kitchen, and somehow found a way to mention the cost of everything they purchased within 30 seconds of meeting anyone. If Mr. Hamilton bought a grill, he'd tell everyone it was forged from volcanic titanium harvested on a luxury moon. If Mrs. Hamilton bought flowers, she'd explain they only bloomed once every 15 years and had to be flown in under armed escort. And if their son Tyler entered the conversation, well, that became everyone's problem. Tyler was 24, built like a fitness magazine cover, and wore his black belt everywhere except the shower. At least, that was my running theory. The young man loved reminding people that he held championships in multiple martial arts. Every conversation somehow ended with him saying things like, "Discipline separates winners from ordinary people." Then he'd dramatically crack his knuckles. Nobody asked him to. He simply did it. Repeatedly. The Hamilton mansion even had an entire room dedicated to Tyler's trophies. Through the giant front windows you could see shelves packed with medals, polished belts, oversized photographs, and enough gold-colored statues to convince passing spacecraft they'd discovered a new civilization built entirely around karate. The funny part? Most of the neighborhood politely nodded through the speeches because nobody wanted another 40-minute lecture about the warrior mindset. I preferred watering my tomatoes. Tomatoes never bragged. Every morning I followed the same routine. Wake up before sunrise. Stretch. Drink coffee. Tend my small garden. Feed the neighborhood birds. Ignore Tyler's dramatic training screams echoing across the street. Hiya! A flock of birds would immediately abandon nearby trees. One elderly alien actually dropped his groceries the first time he heard it. Across the fence lived someone who made those mornings considerably brighter. Her name was Lyra. She belonged to a graceful alien species known for glowing silver eyes and soft blue skin that shimmered whenever sunlight hit it. While most members of her race carried themselves with royal elegance, Lyra possessed one dangerous personality trait. She enjoyed human nonsense far too much. Whenever Tyler practiced spinning kicks in his front yard, she'd quietly walk over carrying a cup of tea and place imaginary scorecards in the air. Today's scream had excellent commitment, she'd whisper. Too much? Only frightened 3 delivery drones. She'd nod thoughtfully. Improvement. I couldn't help laughing. She laughed with me. Somehow those conversations became the favorite part of my mornings. Unlike everyone else, Lyra never seemed impressed by expensive houses or shiny trophies. She admired simple things. Fresh vegetables. Good coffee. Quiet confidence. One afternoon she watched me split firewood with a single swing. She tilted her head. You move like someone who practiced that long before buying the axe. I've had plenty of practice. I suspected as much. You always suspect too much. She smiled. And I'm usually right. That smile had a way of making an ordinary afternoon feel unusually peaceful. Word spread quickly that the annual neighborhood barbecue was finally arriving. It wasn't just a meal. It was the biggest social event on the colony. Humans competed over smoked ribs. Aliens introduced bizarre dishes that somehow looked alive. Children raced hovering scooters. Musicians from 3 different planets performed together. Someone inevitably burned dessert. Someone else always blamed the grill. The entire neighborhood gathered in the Central Park by noon. The air smelled like grilled meat, strange alien spices, sweet fruit, and just enough smoke to convince everyone the event was authentic. Lyra brought glowing crystal berries that changed flavor every bite. Mr. Jenkins accidentally ate 6 before realizing they weren't decorative. His face cycled through surprise, confusion, excitement, and mild panic in under 10 seconds. Everyone applauded. Then came the Hamilton family. They arrived as though attending a royal parade. Matching designer clothes. Private security drones. Tyler wearing yet another black belt. Mr. Hamilton clapped loudly for attention. Ladies and gentlemen. Before lunch, Tyler will demonstrate why he's one of the finest martial artists on this side of the Orion frontier. Several neighbors sighed. The speech had begun. Wooden practice boards appeared. Tyler punched through one. Cheers erupted. He kicked another. More applause. He performed spinning combinations that looked impressive enough for spectators unfamiliar with actual combat. Mrs. Hamilton proudly announced, "His techniques are worth more than some people's homes." Mr. Hamilton laughed loudly. "You can't buy discipline." I quietly continued flipping burgers on my grill. Apparently that was a mistake. Mr. Hamilton noticed. He walked over wearing the satisfied grin of someone preparing an audience. Not impressed? I shrugged. I've seen people break tougher things. The nearby conversation stopped. Tyler slowly turned toward me. His smile disappeared. What exactly is that supposed to mean? I calmly placed another burger onto the grill. It means the burgers need another minute. A few neighbors chuckled. Lyra covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Mr. Hamilton folded his arms. My son is a black belt. Multiple championships. Maybe you'd appreciate real skill if you stepped onto the mat. Tyler grinned. I don't mind going easy on the old guy. The crowd laughed. Everyone looked at me. Even the children stopped eating. Lyra watched silently, her silver eyes narrowing with curiosity. I brushed seasoning off my hands, looked directly at Tyler, and smiled. Are you absolutely sure? The grin on Tyler's face grew even wider when I asked if he was sure. He mistook calmness for fear, the same mistake countless people had made before him. Oh, I'm sure, he said loudly enough for everyone at the barbecue to hear. Don't worry. I won't hurt you. A few people chuckled. Mr. Hamilton folded his arms proudly, looking around the crowd as though his son had already won. I told everyone, he announced. Confidence comes from years of elite training. Lyra leaned toward me just enough for only me to hear. I've seen hatchlings with less confidence. I smiled. They're probably quieter too. She laughed into her cup of tea. Within minutes the barbecue had transformed into an arena. Someone moved the picnic tables. Children climbed onto benches for a better view. A pair of floating camera drones drifted overhead after detecting an unusual gathering. Even the robotic cleanup cart stopped moving, apparently deciding this was more entertaining than collecting paper plates. Mrs. Hamilton clapped excitedly. This is going to get millions of views. Tyler stretched dramatically. Every stretch came with another loud grunt. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, cracked his fingers, then somehow cracked his elbows. I honestly wasn't sure elbows were supposed to do that. One elderly alien whispered to his wife, Is he preparing for battle or trying to assemble himself? She shrugged. I think both. The crowd burst into laughter. Tyler didn't notice. He was too busy admiring himself in the reflection of a parked hover car. Meanwhile, I quietly removed my light jacket and folded it over the back of a chair. Nothing dramatic. No speeches. No intimidating stare. Just folded it neatly. Lyra's eyes narrowed. For the first time she noticed the faded scars crossing my forearms. Most people ignored them. She didn't. Interesting, she murmured. What is? You've spent years gardening. I have. Gardening doesn't usually leave scars like those. I shrugged. The vegetables fight back. She smiled. I don't believe that for a second. Tyler stepped into the open space. Ready? I've been ready since breakfast. He blinked. That wasn't the answer he'd expected. Mr. Hamilton raised his hand like an announcer. 3, 2, 1. Tyler exploded forward. He moved quickly. To the average spectator, it looked impressive. His foot left the ground in a spinning kick aimed toward my shoulder. The crowd gasped. I simply took one small step sideways. That was it. No dramatic dodge. No acrobatics. Just one relaxed step. Tyler's kick sliced through empty air. His own momentum carried him another 2 steps before he barely managed to stay upright. Silence. Then someone laughed. Another joined in. Soon half the neighborhood was trying not to choke on barbecue ribs. One little alien child asked loudly, Was the old human invisible? His mother whispered. No, dear. Then why did the kick miss? I honestly don't know. Tyler's ears turned bright red. You're lucky. Probably, I answered. He charged again. This time he threw a quick combination of punches followed by another flashy spinning attack. Again. One step. A slight turn. Nothing more. His fist passed harmlessly beside me. His spinning kick continued traveling. Unfortunately for him, the barbecue table was directly behind him. Crash! He landed chest first into a mountain of potato salad. Bowls flipped into the air. Corn rolled across the grass. A tray of grilled vegetables somehow landed perfectly on his back. The cleanup robots applauded. Apparently someone had accidentally enabled their celebration setting. The entire crowd erupted. Even Mr. Jenkins nearly dropped his drink laughing. Tyler stood slowly. A lettuce leaf slid off his shoulder. One of the children pointed. He got defeated by salad. The laughter doubled. Mrs. Hamilton hurried over with napkins. My poor baby! I'm fine. You've got mayonnaise in your hair. I know. Lyra leaned closer to me again. I've heard humans use camouflage. I've never seen potato salad before. She nearly spilled her tea laughing. Mr. Hamilton's smile had completely disappeared. Stop showing off, he snapped at his son. Finish this. Tyler's pride had officially replaced his common sense. He stormed toward me again. This time faster. Harder. More determined. His movements became increasingly wild. Punch. Kick. Kick. Spinning elbow. Jumping strike. Every attack looked spectacular. Every attack hit absolutely nothing. I wasn't moving much. Sometimes one small step. Sometimes half a turn. Occasionally I simply leaned backward. Each movement wasted almost no energy. Each miss frustrated Tyler even more. People started noticing. Has the old guy even thrown a punch? No. Has he blocked anything? Not really. So, what's happening? I have no idea. An elderly alien scratched his head. I think the young human is fighting gravity. Another neighbor replied. And gravity appears to be winning. The crowd laughed again. Tyler became reckless. He lunged forward with a powerful tackle. Instead of resisting, I gently placed one hand against his shoulder and shifted my weight slightly. His own momentum carried him past me. He stumbled across the lawn and hugged a decorative tree. The tree beeped politely. Thank you for visiting. The entire park exploded with laughter. Even the floating drones rotated as if trying to understand what they had just recorded. Tyler pushed himself away from the tree, breathing heavily. Sweat covered his forehead. His expensive uniform was stained with grass, barbecue sauce, and potato salad. Meanwhile, I wasn't even breathing hard. I brushed a little dust off my sleeve. You're using too much strength, I said calmly. I don't need advice from you. That's unfortunate. Why? Because it's free. Several neighbors clapped. Someone shouted, "Take the free lesson!" Tyler growled and attacked again. I avoided him just as easily. You keep trying to beat me. I am trying. Exactly. He stopped for a second, confused. I continued calmly. You're trying to overpower everything. That's exhausting. He charged anyway. Missed again. Balance, I said. Another miss. Patience. Another failed kick. Discipline. He slipped on a patch of spilled sauce and barely caught himself. Lyra crossed her arms, smiling proudly. You know, she called out, I've read that humans become wiser with age. I looked at her. Some of us. She grinned. I believe you. The brief exchange somehow irritated Tyler even more. He threw his fastest combination yet. None of it landed. By now the crowd had stopped cheering for flashy techniques. Instead, every clean miss earned louder laughter than the last. Children began counting. Miss number 12. No, 13. I think we're at 15. Tyler finally stepped back, completely exhausted. His breathing sounded like an overloaded cargo shuttle. I still stood comfortably in the same spot. Without realizing it, Lyra had moved closer to my side. Her silver eyes studied every movement I made. You've done this before, she said quietly. Once or twice. No. She shook her head slowly. Far more than that. Just then, an older man near the refreshment table stared at my left forearm. His smile faded. He squinted at the faded tattoo barely visible beneath an old scar. His eyes suddenly widened. He pointed toward me with a trembling finger. Wait, he whispered. The whisper spread through the silent crowd. That can't be. Then he said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Wasn't he the commander of an Army Ranger unit? The words hung in the air like complete silence before a thunderstorm. Wasn't he the commander of an Army Ranger unit? Every conversation stopped. Even Tyler froze in place, breathing heavily while barbecue sauce slowly dripped from the sleeve of his expensive uniform. Mr. Hamilton forced an awkward laugh. That's impossible. The older man stepped closer, never taking his eyes off me. No. I remember now. He pointed toward the faded tattoo on my forearm. I served logistics for the Colonial Defense Force years ago. We used to hear stories about a ranger commander who trained rescue teams during the frontier conflicts. Another gray-haired neighbor suddenly snapped his fingers. You're right. He stared at me with wide eyes. I knew I'd seen that insignia before. Within seconds, whispers spread through the crowd. Army Rangers? No way. So that's why he never got hit. I thought he was just lucky. One young alien tilted his head. What's an Army Ranger? His grandfather smiled. The kind of human you hope is standing beside you when everything goes wrong. The crowd grew quiet again. Tyler swallowed hard. You were military? I was. You never told anyone. No one asked? The simple answer somehow embarrassed him even more. Mr. Hamilton quickly interrupted. So what? My son has modern training. I nodded politely. I'm sure he does. Tyler tried to recover his confidence. So you're saying your old military experience makes you better than me? I shook my head. No. His smile returned. I said experience teaches different lessons. He frowned. What does that even mean? It means you're trying to win. And? I spent my career trying to make sure everyone went home alive. The words landed differently than any punch could have. Several alien neighbors nodded with quiet respect. Lyra looked at me as though she were seeing me for the first time. I wondered why you never bragged, she said softly. I smiled. The people worth impressing were never impressed by bragging. Tyler clenched his fists. I don't care who you used to be. I know. I still want to fight. I noticed. The young man stepped into position again. This time there were no cheers from the crowd. Only curiosity. I sighed. All right. He smiled confidently. Finally. But only once. What? I'll demonstrate one technique. He laughed. One technique won't save you. It isn't supposed to. Mr. Hamilton rubbed his hands together. That's the spirit! Mrs. Hamilton immediately raised her recording device. This is the comeback. Tyler rushed forward with the fastest attack he'd thrown all afternoon. He launched a straight punch while preparing another spinning kick. It looked powerful, fast, confident, and completely predictable. I waited. 1 heartbeat. 2. Just before the punch reached me, I shifted half a step. My hand lightly guided his wrist. My other hand rested gently against his shoulder. His own momentum did the rest. His balance disappeared. 1 foot lifted off the ground. His body rotated. Before anyone understood what had happened, Tyler found himself lying flat on the grass with 1 arm comfortably pinned behind his back. No slam. No violence. No pain. Just complete control. The entire exchange lasted barely 2 seconds. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the floating camera drones stopped moving. Tyler blinked. He tried standing. Couldn't. He tried twisting. Nothing. He looked completely confused. How? I loosened my grip immediately and stepped back. You can get up now. He slowly climbed to his feet, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't even. I know. I never saw. I know. You never hit me. I didn't need to. The oldest alien in attendance burst into laughter. I blinked and the fight ended. Another neighbor shook his head. I've spent 20 minutes watching spinning kicks. And 2 seconds watching actual skill. The applause started with a few people. Then more joined. Soon the entire park echoed with cheers. Not because someone had been defeated. Because everyone had just witnessed something completely unexpected. Tyler looked down at the ground. For the first time all afternoon, he wasn't angry. He was confused. I've trained for years. I can tell. Then why couldn't I touch you? I folded my arms. Because you were fighting your own ego more than you were fighting me. He looked up. I don't understand. You wanted everyone to see how strong you were. He stayed silent. I wanted everyone to go home smiling. Several neighbors nodded. One elderly woman whispered. That's the difference. I continued calmly. Real strength isn't about making someone look weak. It's about making sure nobody gets hurt. Tyler slowly looked around. The barbecue tables. The laughing children. The smiling neighbors. The food scattered across the grass because of his own reckless attacks. His shoulders dropped. I made a fool of myself. You learned something. That's not the same. It can be. Lyra walked over carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed one to me. I was wondering something. What? She smiled mischievously. Last month you split enough firewood for 6 families before breakfast. I remember. I thought you were showing off. I was trying to stay warm. She laughed. I should have guessed. She looked directly into my eyes. You humans are very strange. We've been called worse. No. She smiled warmly. You're full of surprises. The compliment caught me slightly off guard. I'll accept that. I've also noticed something else. What? The strongest human here was the only one who never felt the need to tell anyone. A nearby alien overheard her. He laughed loudly. I've met 3 human engineers exactly like that. Another neighbor joined in. And the quiet mechanic who repaired my shuttle turned out to have invented the engine. Mr. Jenkins raised his drink. Maybe humans hide their best people on purpose. I shrugged. It saves long conversations. Everyone laughed again. Even Tyler managed a small smile. The tension that had filled the park only minutes earlier completely disappeared. Children immediately began acting out the match. One little boy spun around dramatically before intentionally falling into a pile of grass. Another child shouted, I'm Tyler! A tiny alien girl calmly stepped around him. I'm the old human. The children erupted into laughter. Even Tyler couldn't stop himself from smiling at the ridiculous performance. Mr. Hamilton, however, looked like someone had just informed him that his luxury hover car had been replaced with a bicycle. He opened his mouth several times before finally giving up. For the first time since I'd moved into the neighborhood, he had absolutely nothing to brag about. Just then Lyra lightly touched my arm. There's an Interstellar Harvest Festival next weekend. I've heard. They're holding it in the Capitol Gardens. They usually do. She hesitated for just a moment before smiling. I was wondering if you joined me. I raised an eyebrow. As your bodyguard? She laughed. No. As my favorite barbecue partner. I smiled. I think I can manage that. She grinned. Good. Then she leaned closer and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. But only if you promise not to embarrass anyone else with 2 seconds of effort. I chuckled. I'll do my best. Behind us, Tyler looked at the grass where he'd been pinned only moments before. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about trophies. He was wondering how much he still had left to learn. The barbecue should have ended there, but life has a funny habit of keeping the best punchline for last. For the first time since moving into Harmony Ridge, the Hamilton family wasn't surrounded by applause. Instead, neighbors gathered around me asking questions I had successfully avoided for years. Were you really an Army Ranger? How many years did you serve? Is it true Rangers train on low-gravity worlds? I answered only a few. Long enough. Yes. Sometimes. The less I said, the more interested everyone became. Mr. Hamilton looked completely defeated. For a man who usually had an opinion about everything, silence seemed like a painful new experience. Tyler walked toward me, no longer carrying the swagger he'd worn all afternoon. His shoulders were lower. His voice quieter. I owe you an apology. The entire crowd turned toward him. He took a deep breath. I thought trophies made me better than everyone else. I nodded. A lot of people think that. I mocked you. You did. I challenged you just to impress people. I noticed. A few neighbors laughed. Even Tyler managed an embarrassed smile. I'm sorry. I extended my hand. Apology accepted. He shook it firmly. What happens now? Now we finish the barbecue. He blinked. That's it. Were you expecting another lecture? A little. I've already said the important part. He looked confused again. What was that? Real strength isn't loud. Several people quietly applauded. Mrs. Hamilton finally walked over. She looked far less proud than she had earlier. I'm sorry too. I smiled politely. We all have days we'd like to do over. Mr. Hamilton rubbed the back of his neck. I suppose I may have bragged a little. The neighborhood erupted with laughter. A little? Mr. Jenkins nearly dropped his drink. You gave a 30-minute speech about imported barbecue forks. Someone else shouted. They had certificates. Even Mr. Hamilton laughed at himself. All right, maybe more than a little. The tension disappeared completely. Within minutes everyone returned to eating. Cleanup robots collected broken plates, while cheerful music started playing again. Children resumed racing around the park. The barbecue had officially been saved. Or at least what remained of the potato salad had. A week later there was an unexpected knock on my door. When I opened it, Tyler stood outside carrying 2 bags of groceries. I brought steaks. Why? I figured training probably requires food. I crossed my arms. Training? He nodded. If you're willing. You still want lessons? More than ever. I studied him for several seconds. What happens to your black belt? I'll still wear it. What about your ego? He sighed. I'll leave that at home. I couldn't help smiling. Now you're ready. Training became the neighborhood's newest source of entertainment. On the very first morning I handed Tyler a broom. He stared at it. I thought we'd start with fighting. We are. This is a broom. Exactly. What am I supposed to do? Sweep. He blinked twice. For how long? Until you're balanced enough that the broom never leaves the ground. He looked horrified. I've won championships. And today. I pointed toward a pile of leaves. You're losing to Autumn. Lyra laughed so hard she had to sit on the porch steps. The next lesson involved carrying 2 full buckets of water across the yard. Tyler marched confidently. 3 steps later. Splash. Water everywhere. I handed him 2 more buckets. Again. By lunchtime he'd watered my garden 6 different times without meaning to. The tomatoes had never been happier. Neighborhood children started bringing lawn chairs just to watch the training sessions. They even sold homemade snacks. One little entrepreneur opened a lemonade stand with a handwritten sign that read, "Watch the champion lose to housework." Business was excellent. Another morning I balanced a small apple on Tyler's head. He froze. What are we doing? Standing. For how long? Until that apple stops falling. It hasn't fallen. Exactly. 5 minutes later a tiny alien bird landed on the apple. Tyler didn't dare move. The children applauded. I've never seen someone defeated by fruit twice. One joked. Even Tyler laughed. Week after week he improved. Not because he learned spectacular new techniques. Because he finally learned patience. His movements became calmer. His breathing steadier. He stopped rushing. Stopped showing off. Stopped trying to impress invisible audiences. One afternoon he noticed an elderly alien struggling to carry heavy grocery crates. Without anyone asking, Tyler quietly walked over and carried everything inside. No speeches. No flexing. No dramatic poses. He simply helped. Watching from across the street I smiled. Lyra noticed. You're proud of him. I am. You changed him. He changed himself. She nodded thoughtfully. Humans always say things like that. Because it's usually true. A few days later the Interstellar Harvest Festival finally arrived. The Capitol Gardens stretched for miles beneath glowing crystal lanterns. Alien musicians filled the evening air with melodies unlike anything found on Earth. Food stalls lined every pathway. Colorful lights reflected off nearby lakes. It looked less like a festival and more like someone had invited half the galaxy to celebrate together. Lyra waited near the entrance wearing elegant silver clothing that shimmered beneath the lanterns. When she saw me, she smiled. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten. I spent 20 years in the military. So? We're trained to arrive early. She laughed. I should have known. We wandered through the festival together, tasting strange desserts and laughing at performers attempting human dance moves with varying degrees of success. One alien comedian pointed toward me after hearing the barbecue story. So you're the legendary old human. I'd prefer retired. I heard you defeated a champion. I mostly avoided him. The comedian grinned. That's even funnier. By the end of the evening Lyra stopped beside a quiet lake glowing beneath floating lanterns. You know, she said softly, I wasn't interested because you were strong. No. No. She looked into my eyes. I liked you because every morning you fed birds before feeding yourself. I laughed. That's a surprisingly specific reason. It tells me everything I needed to know. She slipped her hand into mine. Strength fades. Trophies collect dust. But kindness, she smiled, gets more attractive every year. For a moment neither of us spoke. The peaceful silence said enough. Back in Harmony Ridge, the next annual barbecue became the most anticipated event on the colony. Not because of martial arts demonstrations. Because everyone wanted to see what ridiculous lesson would happen next. Mr. Hamilton volunteered to cook instead of giving speeches. Mrs. Hamilton banned trophy discussions for the day. Tyler spent most of the afternoon helping children learn balance games instead of showing off. One little boy asked him, Are you still the strongest guy here? Tyler looked toward me. Then he smiled. I'm still learning what strength actually means. I nearly choked on my coffee. That, I said, is the smartest thing you've ever said." The neighborhood burst into applause. As the sun disappeared beyond the crystal trees, humans and aliens shared food, stories, and laughter around the grills. Lyra leaned against my shoulder. "So, what? Same barbecue next year?" I looked around at smiling neighbors, happy children, and Tyler patiently teaching balance instead of boasting. Then I grinned. "Absolutely. But only if nobody brings another black belt to a hamburger fight." The laughter echoed through the entire neighborhood, proving once again that humanity's greatest victories were never won through pride or intimidation. They were earned through discipline, humility, kindness, and the ability to turn even a challenge into a reason for everyone to smile.